Hello, good morning, everybody, wherever you are in the world. This is Shoshana Mizell, and I am also known as Mama Shoshana. I just wanted to welcome you to my channel. Hopefully, if you enjoy my videos, you can like, share, and subscribe. And I thought, just off the cuff today, I would talk a little bit about perception. Perception, for me and how I've experienced it in my life, is that there's been something that happened, whether it's something that happened in the world, something that we're listening to from social media, from news channels, or something that's happened right in front of us, friends, family, or even strangers, that we happen to be in that place at that time to witness it. And how if you talk to people, everybody will have a different perception about what happened. And even if people agree that they all saw a fire truck and the truck was red, every person will have a different perception of what a fire truck may mean to them, what experiences they've had with it, if it triggers anything, if it triggers any memories. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that today, and I'm going to be talking about it in a very personal way because it's going to be my personal experience. So grab some tea, coffee, water, whatever you want, and we'll be right back. Okay, welcome back. Well, I have my tea. Actually, just passed through Dunkin' Donuts. They're not sponsoring this. I just happened to go by Dunkin' Donuts. And so here's the story. When I was younger, let's say in my 20s, 30s, 40s, and even 50s, a lot of times my perception of how one would deepen a relationship with somebody or let somebody know about me is we talk about our past. That's a good way to get to know people. And when deep conversations would arise and I would share my past and somebody would share their past with me in a very deep, personal, intimate way, often it would bring up very emotional feelings, obviously, especially if any of the memories were attached to trauma or they were attached to a longing or a missing somebody. And with time, I realized that I was living through my past to connect to another person, there's nothing wrong with that as far as I'm concerned. But I was kind of stuck there. I had become my past rather than my past being part of what developed me to be who I am now. And that's something I worked on. I worked on very hard. I worked on that in therapy. I worked on that on my own, reading and listening. And I worked on it in Alcoholics Anonymous. I have a little over 30 years sober. And believe me, there's a lot of deep work. Anything that I wanted to find, or things I wanted to find out about myself or have a connection to a power greater than myself, I found so much of it in the book Alcoholics Anonymous, the support of other people, and doing the work. So as time went on, I stopped identifying myself as the kid whose mother killed herself when I was 8 years old. I stopped identifying myself as the little girl, the teenage girl whose father had been sexually inappropriate with her. I stopped identifying myself as the kid who couldn't read or write, who peed in her bed till the age of 8 or 9 years old. I stopped identifying myself as the target for bullies. And slowly, again, with all the work I told you I did, slowly came out of being those things by healing I didn't have to worry about feeling the pain because I felt the pain, but processing the pain was very, very different. And the way that I processed it was to change my perception of the people in my life when I was vulnerable and when I was young. I changed my perception of them. So I think about my mother. Besides taking her life, she exhibited a lot of very manic behavior, depressive behavior. She was a single mom of 3 kids, my sister, my brother, and myself. We struggled financially. She, what I'm told, had bipolar, which was not really diagnosed as bipolar back in the 60s. It was, if a woman was, exhibiting manic or depressive behavior, she was hysterical. And they'd give them Valium and, tell them to chill out and relax. So my mother was dealing with unresolved mental issues. And when I perceived my mother as a human being, took her out of the identification of being my mother and just saw her as being a person completely individual from me. And I looked at her life and I took myself as her daughter out of the equation. I looked at her life and I saw all the things that she had been through and how they had all manifested themselves into her coming to the point at 39 years old to decide to take her own life. And I made it about who it was about, and that was her. So she didn't leave because she didn't love me. She didn't leave because she decided that she was going to abandon me. She took her life because she, I think, probably felt that that was the only way out, the only way that she could get any relief from her emotional pain. I think it's just not even enough to describe it. I would say torture. When my father, he was in my life till I was 40. He died when I was 40 years old, but there was a lot of abuse on many levels, and I'm not going to go into that right now. I hated him and loved him at the same time. That duality was really, really difficult for me. And up until a couple of years ago, I'm 66 now, so up until a couple of years ago, there were times where I felt a sense of forgiveness for him. And then other times it would just kind of bubble back up again. And I went through this constantly. I was getting so aggravated because I worked so hard in therapy. I worked so hard in specialized therapy for complex post-traumatic stress disorder, praying to God, writing, yoga, doing things that I felt I could empower myself with, and empower myself to control over my body, because when I was young, I didn't have control over my body, unfortunately. And so one day my therapist told me, you know what, Shoshana, you have been told what happened to you. And while it was happening, you had no voice. You couldn't express it. You had to survive. So you just went numb. And she had said to me that, why don't I, me the patient, why don't I write about how I saw things? So she changed my perspective from how my family saw me and what they told me about me and what they told me about the trauma I had been through. And she said, switch it. And that I should tell my story about what I went through. And I thought, well, that's impossible, because I remember one time my father doing something to me, and I remember looking to the side, looking at a blank wall, and blacking out. I have no idea exactly what he did. I don't know how long it lasted. I completely blacked out. So I was like, how can I possibly tell my story about something like that when I don't remember it? And she said, just try. So I started writing, and slowly my feelings and thoughts about what happened started to come up. It's not that I had blacked out. I think my brain stopped experiencing what I was experiencing to save me so I could survive. But the memories were still somewhere very deep inside me, and there's no way that they were going to come out until my subconscious knew I was emotionally ready and that I had a support system around me. So that was the first step, that I switched to perception of myself from what people in my life told me to what I told me. Then the next step was, and this was the hard one, because my father, as many crappy things he might have done, he did so many wonderful things for me. He was so supportive of my art, my dance. I knew that he loved me. I never questioned that. But I had to separate myself from my father as his daughter. I had to take him, just like I did with my mom, completely, as though he had never had children, and look at his life and see all the horrible things that he had went through. And again, at that time, my father had told me that he was diagnosed with manic depression. So basically that's kind of like bipolar. As far as I know, I'm not a professional again, and if I'm wrong, please let me know. But that's what I've been told by professionals, that manic depression is kind of like another word, another, I don't know what exactly how I would say it, but it's similar to bipolar. Anyway, I'm sorry. So I remember while I was writing my book, I was interviewing different people from my past and people that had known my father. And this is where my perception really changed about my dad. And it wasn't something that was planned. It was something that happened that was not planned. So I asked one of my ex-boyfriends, who we were boyfriend and girlfriend when I was like, I don't know, 17, 18 years old, something like that, for a few years. But him and my father had become very close. So I interviewed him for my book, and he told me one story that seemed to stand out to him, that was the quintessential moment where he saw how much my father loathed himself. My father and stepmother always had fights. My stepmother is very docile. My father was a drinker. He was a controller. He was rageful. All things that are manifested, that came, and he acted out that way, that were manifested through a lot of trauma that he had went through. And my ex-boyfriend said that, my stepmother left and my father was still at their business. And my father said to my ex-boyfriend, let's go get something to eat. So they went to this kind of dive place where they had like fried chicken. And my father was a diabetic, so he had to really be careful of what he ate. And he pretty much didn't. He pretty much used food as a drug, and used food to destroy himself. So my father wound up ordering like an entire chicken, fried chicken, and ate the entire thing. And what my ex-boyfriend described is that there was this like numbness, this like complete detachment in my father's eyes. And it was like he was eating it, and it was like he was like eating it like a starving animal. So here he had a fight with my stepmother. I don't know what it was about, but here he was punishing himself with food that was going to hurt him. He was eating it like it was going to be his last meal. And something about that just opened up the floodgates for me. I just started crying. I felt such deep compassion for him as a human being, not as the title of being my father, but just as a human being, as a child of God. And in that moment, my perception changed. I had such a flood of forgiveness, understanding, compassion, and empathy. And not that all my feelings about what my dad did went away, but it was finally the door was open, and I could start walking through this path to forgiveness. And recently somebody had told me that I regurgitate my trauma, I regurgitate my past constantly. And you know, of course, at first I took that as, you know, it was a very rough thing to say, especially someone I just knew for about a month. And I felt very defensive. I felt insulted, especially because they asked me about my past and I was explaining it to them, but also, you know, explaining to them how I healed from my past. What are the things that I did? But then, you know, I decided to change my perception of the conversation. Do I talk about my past too much? Do I hang on to my trauma and try and connect with people through that too much? That's something I have to think about. And another thing is that switching my perception from being self-defensive to, is this person hurting? Is there something I'm saying or something that they cannot say that is triggering them? And that is an incredible learning experience. It's a lot of growth for anybody to have. So that has been a bit of the past and a bit of the present in my journey to become more compassionate and about things people say that I don't like. And that is a switch of perception. So I want to thank you so much for listening. I don't know if you could relate to it or not. I'm sure you probably could. And if there's anything you want me to talk about, any subjects at all, if I've experienced them and I've healed from it, I'll talk about it. I mean, it's something that I went through that I still haven't healed about. I'm not going to talk about because I don't want to just talk about problems. And if it's something that I didn't go through, I will definitely look it up and see if I can find some kind of groove in it that I have something to say about. I'm going to add the link for my book here, and I am studying for my state board exam. I graduated from school as a substance abuse counselor. I'm very grateful for that. So at 66 years old, I will soon be having a change of career. So thank you so much. Again, please subscribe, like, and share, and have an amazing day. Bye-bye. Take care. Love, Mama Shoshana.